Does anyone ever feel like they're constantly hurrying from one thing to the next? Anyone? Okay. Yeah, I thought that might. How about, does anybody in here have difficulty resting because you feel like you should be doing something? Anyone? Yep. How many of you, this is a telltale sign right here, how many of you are in the grocery line and you look over and you see a shorter line, and so you get out of your line and you move over to the shorter line? Thank you for owning it. Thank you for owning it. Yes. Well, I've been reading this book. It's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. And a kind church member gave it to me. And while I'm only about a third of the way through, I know it's going to be one of those books I'm going to need to read again. It really is good. In his book, Comer says, based on current research by mental health professionals, that there is an epidemic of hurry sickness. Hurry sickness. Now, what is hurry sickness? I bet you could guess, but let me give you some of the things that it's characterized by, some symptoms of hurry sickness. I want you to see if any of these fit you. Constant anxiety, irritability, hypersensitivity, constant exhaustion, lack of patience, inability to have fun when others are, restlessness, lack of self-care, escapist behaviors like overeating, overdrinking, overworking, over-social mediating, lack of connection to God, lack of connection to others, the inability to simply sit still. Any of those resonate with any of you? I could own several of those on that list. We have become a society of busy people. We strive, we work, we do, we pursue, we chase. We honor that word busy. If somebody says, "How you doing?" what do most of us say? "Oh, I've just been busy." And we carry that like a badge of honor, right? If we say, "Well, I've just been laying around doing nothing," people would just not know how to respond to that, right? So we say we're busy because it's so important. We're always doing. We're human beings, by the way, not human doings. And when we are not physically doing something, we are mentally focused on what we should be doing. Or in every spare moment that we have, what do? We're staring at our phones, yes, or some other electronic gadget so that we can see what the rest of the world is doing. Yeah. Our brains, friends, are literally being rewired to need that constant doing, the constant stimulation, when what we really need is peace. Peace. A Roman Catholic monk, Thomas Merton, many of you may have read Thomas Merton stuff, he says this: "The rush and pressure of modern life is a pervasive form of contemporary violence." Let me read that again. The rush and pressure of modern life is a pervasive form of contemporary violence. Now, the crazy thing is Merton died in the 60s. So that rush and pressure of modern life he was talking about is nothing compared to what we have today. A pervasive form of violence. It sounds kind of extreme, but you know what? Here's what I know. Hurry kills a lot of things. Hurry kills relationships. It fails to take the time to spend with your loved ones and develop friendships. It fails to appreciate the moments in life. It's too busy for listening. Hurry kills wisdom because wisdom takes time and thought and space. It fails to stop and listen for that still small voice. Hurry kills our faith because it never allows us to spend time with the one source of our faith. And it certainly kills our bodies as we cram down whatever food we can get in our mouths on the way to somewhere else. How did we get here? Has it always been this way and we're just recognizing it? You know, is it one of those things like every generation always says about the younger generation, those haircuts and those clothes they wear, you know, that like every generation does that. Is this one of those things, or is this a more modern development? Well, in Comer's book, he gives us a brief history of how we got here. And so let me share a couple of things with you. So first, we had no clock, right? When man and woman started, there was no clock. They just used the sun as their sort of clock. Then there was the sundial. And believe it or not, people in the 3rd century were complaining about sundials chunking their life into certain time slots. They didn't like that. Psh, they wouldn't know what to do today. But most historians point to 1370 as the turning point in our relationship to time. That was the year that the first public clock was put up in a tower in Germany. Before that, time was natural. It was linked to the rotation of the earth on its axis and the 4 seasons. You went to bed with the moon. You got up with the sun. Days in the summer were long and full. Days in the winter were slow and short. There was a rhythm to the days and the years and the seasons. Then in 1789, you had another invention. Anybody want to guess what that was? The light bulb. That's right. Which made it possible to now stay up past dark, and that changed things. Now, let me tell you something that's going to blow you away. Brace yourself for this. Before Edison and the invention of the light bulb, the average person slept 11 hours a night. Can you believe that? Like, wow, 11 hours a night. Now, today, the average person, the average amount of sleep is 7 hours. We've lost 4 hours in a century, a little over a century and a half or so. 4 hours of sleep. About a century ago, though, other things started to happen. Technology started to change our relationship with time again. Because then we got these so-called labor-saving devices. Oh, what a joke that is. So things like when you used to have to go out and chop wood and, you know, find the right tree, chop the wood, split the wood, do all the things. It could take you all day just to get enough wood for you to stay warm at night, right? You had to do all these things. Well, then, with modern technology, you just flip a switch and there you go. It's warm. You push a button. And today you can even do that from your phone when you're not even at your home. You can set the temperature. But in the 1960s, this is what's funny to me, futurists all over the world, from sci-fi writers to political theorists, thought that by now we'd be working way fewer hours. One famous Senate committee in 1967 was told that by 1985, the average American would work only 22 hours a week and only 27 weeks a year. Everybody thought that the main problem in the future would be too much leisure. That's really funny. So, but the exact opposite has happened, of course. Leisure time has gone down. The average American works nearly 4 more weeks per year than they did in 1979. 4 more weeks a year. All the time that we work, more than we used to, adds up to 4 more weeks. So leisure's not our problem in any form or fashion. The world has literally sped up around us. We are the most hurried generation ever, and I don't see too many signs of it changing as a culture. But there's a different way, friends. What I'm seeing in some individuals as they're trying to battle this is that there are small groups of people choosing different ways, trying to get out of the hurry of life. Some people are choosing to live off-grid completely. They find a place in a remote area in the woods. They build their home. They live as far out of the real world as they possibly can, looking to erase that hurry in their life. I watched a video yesterday of a guy who, over 20 years' time, built this huge houseboat, all out of scrap stuff that he found. He has his own little garden on it. I mean, he's got his home. He's got all exercise things on it. He's got all this stuff so that he doesn't have to live in the real world. He has a canoe, and he canoes over to land and goes in and gets supplies occasionally, and that's about it. The rest he does right there on his houseboat on a river. So there are also people who are working remotely and traveling at the same time with their families because they don't want to be in the midst of the hustle and bustle. There are people creating homesteads with their family or other families where they just carve out a few acres and they start their own farm and ranch, and they try to live off the land and go into town as little as possible. Some are simplifying. There's a whole minimalist trend that's been going for the last few decades where people try to live with minimal stuff, the bare needs, so that their lives will be less cluttered and less hurried. And if you're like me, maybe you feel the hurry sickness and you're thinking some of these ideas don't sound too bad. And you sense that this hurry sickness is bad for you, but you don't know what to do about it. Well, what if I told you that right here in our Bibles, there's a way? It's a way forward, and it's pretty simple. We try to make it complicated, but it's really pretty simple. Let's think about this. When Jesus called his disciples, he didn't give them a set of rules and say, now when you can follow these rules, you can come with me. He didn't say, I need you to believe this, this, and this, and when you believe those things, then you can become my follower. No. He said two simple words over and over again. What were those words? Follow me. That's what he said. Follow me. He said that to the disciples. He said that to the rich young ruler. He said that to everyone. Follow me. Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life. And he really meant that. And what if he meant that not just allegorically, but also as like literally? I'm the way, friends. This is the way. The way I'm living, Jesus says, is the way you should live. The late Dallas Willard, one of the great Christian teachers of our time, was once asked, if you had one word to describe Jesus, what would it be? Now, before I give you his answer, I want you to think for a minute about what your answer might be. One word to describe Jesus, what would that word be? Just give you a minute. Anybody want to share a word with me? Yell it out. Love, forgiving, salvation, compassion. Yeah, those are great words, all words that I think I would have come up as well. Selfless, leader, strong, holy, teacher, all those things. Dallas Willard's answer. Now, Dallas, I'm telling you, he's a revered Christian teacher. Many of you have probably read some Dallas Willard stuff. His word, relaxed. I know, isn't that weird? It seems like an odd descriptive word to choose for Jesus, doesn't it? But if we look at the scriptures, we can indeed find that Jesus was often very relaxed or at ease. He was never in a hurry. He spent time at rest. He spent a lot of time alone with God. He did not worry where he would lay his head or where he would find food. He simply went from town to town. He took naps. He was fully present with people. He was patient. Certainly, Jesus had moments of stress and anger and sorrow, and certainly he felt the pressure of what was put upon him. But in general, he led a life that was constantly at ease, slowly moving from town to town, from crowd to crowd, person to person, without hurrying anywhere. Jesus showed us the way to live. He demonstrated an unhurried way. And so what if we took that seriously and followed his way? Our verses today from the Gospel of Matthew are some of my favorites. I love the thought of taking my weary soul and taking it to Jesus and finding rest in that. Doesn't that sound appealing to you guys? But these verses contain more than just rest. They contain a way of life. Jesus does not promise an easy life in these verses or anywhere else for that matter. In fact, in the Gospel of John, Jesus says, "In this world you will find trouble, but do not fear, for I've overcome the world." Jesus does promise us that if we attach ourselves to him, he will teach us and help us navigate the world before us. So let's talk about the yoke in this scripture today. Now, when I say yoke, I'm saying Y-O-K-E yoke, not Y-O-L-K yoke like egg yolks. This is Y-O-K-E yoke, and it's a heavy wooden harness that fits over the shoulders of two oxen. It connects the oxen together, and in turn, it's attached to reins for steering and a plow to till the field. Now, to use this properly, a good farmer would know, each ox has to be broken in and trained and well matched with another ox. Because if one ox is too strong or quick, it'll jerk and strain the other ox. Or if both oxen are too green or haven't been trained yet, they might both eagerly strain to get forward too quickly, hurting their necks and even choking themselves. The key is to have one ox that is well trained and pair it with a young ox who will learn from the mature ox. The lead ox will show the younger ox how to wear the yoke loosely and lightly. The mature ox will undoubtedly carry and pull the brunt of the weight at first, until the younger ox learns to walk in step in a slow and steady pace so as not to get bruised, choked, or worn out too early. Now, many of you understand this analogy of a yoke. You've probably seen this before. You've heard about it. You understand what this oxen sort of yoke was. But yoke in Jesus' time also had another meaning. It was separate but related. So a religious leader's teaching was called a yoke. And each teacher had his own sort of yoke. They had their own teachings and their own prescribed way of life. It might be if I said like this, if I said, each of your pastors has their own theology and their own way of teaching you to live out that life with Christ. And so if I'm teaching you, I want you to wear my yoke. Like think about our stoles that we wear when we're in the other service. Some of you don't even know what that is because you've never even seen them. But we wear these stoles things over our robe. And what if I said, you put on my yoke because I'm teaching you how to do this thing, how to do life with God. I want you to wear my yoke. And then if you went to another teacher, they'd say, well, mine's slightly different, so I want you to wear my yoke. Okay, so this was a thing. The common teaching yoke of Jesus' time was traditionally a long list of laws, traditions, rules, and expectations. So when Jesus said, my yoke, he means my way of life as I teach it. My way of life with God as I'm teaching you. This was a different way than what the other teachers were teaching. Jesus here isn't contrasting between my yoke and no yoke. It's not like you just need to put a yoke on and you've never worn one. Jesus knows that we all have a yoke, that we all are yoked to something. Maybe it's a previous religious leader's way of teaching us. Maybe it's that thing that you learned in Sunday school when you were younger, and you can't get out of that way of thinking about God. Maybe it's some other thing that you read about God, and it doesn't make sense, but you can't let go of it because it's this yoke you carry around. Maybe you're yoked to trying harder. Maybe you're yoked to perfectionism, to control, to unresolved issues, to baggage from your past, to work, to addiction, to people-pleasing. None of those will get you to the finish line in health, friends. You will not have life to the full, as Jesus said that he came for us to do. Jesus here was teaching about a completely different way of life. Walking with Jesus' easy yoke does not mean an easy life, but it does mean a life with a partner, a life with someone by your side each step of the way. See, many of us in this Christian life, we think we just have to try harder. We need to do more. We need to serve more. We need to volunteer more. We need to give more. We need to pray more. And all that's good. But here's a simpler way. Walk with Jesus. Jesus calls us to just walk with Jesus just as we are. He says, put on this yoke. Imagine the ox. Put on this yoke and I'll be right beside you. That's all you got to do. You got to show up and you got to walk with me. And I'm going to give you the pace. I'm going to give you the direction. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to lead you. I'm going to show you the way to go through this life with God. Now, the good news is as you do that, you may grow in your love of God and of others. That will probably happen, which may lead to more serving or more praying or more giving. It might lead to all sorts of things. But you don't have to try harder to do any of that. Hear me, you don't have to try harder to do any of that. I know it feels like it when you come to church and you hear this thing and the preacher says da-da-da-da-da, and you go home and you think, man, I just need to do more of this, or I need to pray, I need to read my Bible more, I need to give more, I need to serve more. I get it. But what if we just got up each day and we said, Jesus, I'm taking on your yoke. I'm just taking on your yoke, Jesus. You're going to lead me. I'm just going to imagine you right beside me, and I'm stuck to you, so I can't get too far ahead of you. I can't get too far behind you. I got to just stay right with you at your pace. That sounds like a lot better way of life to me than hurry sickness that we all have. So let's get practical. What does it look like to take on Jesus' yoke? It begins with getting up every day, friends, with the recognition that you need Jesus. It begins with prayer to admit, I need you, Jesus. And then to take on Jesus' yoke and allow him to take the lead. The poet Mary Oliver wrote, attention is the beginning of devotion. Get up every day and turn your attention toward Jesus, which may mean you have to turn your attention away from something else. That might be the hard part. But get up and start your day with attention toward Jesus and say, Jesus, let's put on our yoke. I'm here. Let's go. We're built for God, friends. We're built for this. This is how God made us. God made us to need Jesus. God made us to have this hole that only God can fill. And when we try to fill it with other things, it leaves us feeling empty. But when we fill it with Jesus, when we allow Jesus to just show us each step of the way, our souls can be at rest. You can live an unhurried life, but it takes every day getting up and taking on Jesus' yoke. And when you do that, he shares your burdens. He shows you the way. He shows you every step. And he puts your soul at rest. And I, for one, could really use that sort of way of life. I pray for us that we are all in need of that way of life and that we think about every day putting on the yoke of Jesus.